Before,
Um,
Rob, Avi, before we start, did you get
yes,
my
please.
requesting
Judy.
a dedication for the refuah shalema of my sister, Esther Batsaro? She should be having open heart surgery as we are learning.
Wow.
A valve replacement.
May it be successful, Judy.
Amen.
And
Amen.
when I was heart-stricken, Avital Sharansky sent me a note, and it read Psalms 147, sentences 2 and 3. So I leave it as an assignment for everyone to look it up. Psalms 147, sentences 2 and 3. And this morning, what I'd like to do is Tova on? I don't see Tova. I see Fern. I see Rita and Phil. Hope Tova's okay.
No, I'm okay, and I'm right here.
Okay, just checking it out, Tova.
Okay, I appreciate
I mean, you
that.
didn't give me any excuse notice, so Joyce is here, everybody, Elaine. So this shiur is called the symbolism of the sneh of the burning bush. And we're going to take it right from the beginning. Eric, thank God, is helping us. Eric gets a mazel tov because he's to be wed, God willing. I'm going to have the honor to do the wedding. So, you know, Eric, when I do a wedding, we kind of know when it begins, but you never know when it ends. It goes on and on and on. And I love the comment of Rabbi Chaim Marta, who married Susie. I did that wedding too, and it went on. And towards the end, Chaim got up and he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, the wedding is over. Let the marriage begin." In those immortal words. And here they are, 7 children later, doing just fine. Thank God. So we're taking a look at chapter 3, sentence 1. It's from last week's portion, but it really has a lot to do with the portions we're reading now. Just note that the burning bush, the Hebrew term for the burning bush is sineh. And that's one bookend where Moses receives a revelation. And the latter bookend is when the whole people of Israel, when we're standing at Sinai, and notice the parallelism between the sound, sneh and Sinai. And not only does the place sound the same, the place was identical. The sneh, divine revelation, was in a place called Chorev. And we're told that Sinai was also in Chorev. So there seems to be a parallelism between the two. The sneh was a burning bush. It could not be consumed. And when one reads the preamble to Sinai, we're told that the mountain was lavat esh, it was consumed. It was consumed in fire. And the people at Sinai had to stand a distance away, just as Moses backs off from the burning bush. They seem to be experiences that are parallel, except for the sneh is a happening to Moshe, between God and Moses, the leader, whereas what happens at Sinai, that is what's occurring between God and the people. But let's take it right from the top. Right at the top, we're told, Moshe haya ro'eh etzon yitro chotno kohen midyan. Now Moses tended the flock of his father-in-law. And it's fascinating that he, like most of biblical leaders, they were shepherds before they were leaders. What a contrast. The proverbial enemies of Am Yisrael most often were hunters. Esau, who was not really a bad guy, but still in the text, he's commonly understood as not the best of Chevra. He was a hunter. Goliath was a hunter. Nimrod was a hunter. Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, all of them, Rachel, they were shepherds. And the Midrash says that if you knew how to tend a sheep, every sheep counts. If you lose one, you're losing the world. That meant that you were worthy. You had the characteristics to be a good leader of the people. And so we're told that he was a shepherd of his father-in-law Yitro, the priest of Midian. Fascinating. He marries a woman with that background. Vayinhag et hatzon achar hamidbar. Thank you for pointing to those words, Eric. And he drove the flock. And then there is this word achar hamidbar. Here the translation is, he drove the flock into the wilderness. Actually, achar means more like after the wilderness. What is that all about? If I can face everyone just for a moment, we all know that there are laws that define our relationship with God, and then there are laws of bein adam lamakom, interpersonal ethics. And it's too often the case that people are very committed to laws that ask them to be true to their relationship with God, but they're not as careful when it comes to relationships with their fellow person. And you would think that as Moses was going to be receiving the revelation from God, that at that point, he could do whatever he wants. He could expropriate land. He could tend his flock anywhere. But the text goes out of its way, and this is what the Midrash says, that he tended his flock beyond the desert, making sure that where his flock grazed, that land belonged to no one. That's a very important message. He didn't want the flock to be in land owned by another person. And when he would be challenged, he could say, well, I'm about ready to receive the revelation from God. I could do whatever I want. Or let me put it this way. I think it was Rabbi Yisrael Salanta, the father of the Muslim movement, who said, on our way to performing a mitzvah in relationship to God, we should not step on people. On our way to performing a mitzvah, we should not step on people. And so Moshe, he is tending to the flock, achar hamidbar, beyond the desert. And let's go back to the video, as Warner Wolf used to say, Arnie. Let's go back to the text. And then we're told, Vayavo el har ha-Elohim choreva. He comes to Chorev, the mountain of God. Vayera malach Adonai elav belabat ish. An angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire out of a bush. And so there is a blazing fire. And as he looks carefully into the blazing fire, he sees an angel of the Lord. Vayar vihine hasneh bo'eh ba'ish. And he sees that the sneh, the burning bush, bo'eh ba'ish, it is a flame, bo'eh, it's burning with fire. V'hasneh einenu ukal, and the bush is not consumed. Ukal is from the word ochel, like food that one digests. This is not digested. The flame, I don't like even the fire, it's the light, the softness, the spirituality of the light is not consumed. Vayome Moshe says, Asura na ve'ereh. Here the translation is, let me turn aside to look. Asura could also mean, let me step back in order to see et hamar'eh hagadol hazeh, this marvelous sight. Madua lo yiv'ah hasner. Why doesn't the bush, why is it not consumed? If I can face everyone again, Eric, thank you. Fascinating. He sees the burning bush, and if he wants to see it clearly, what would we think? If you want to see it clearly, get up closer, right? Get up closer. He doesn't say that. I want to see what's going on. And so he says, let me back off. Let me step back to see what's going on. It doesn't seem to be logical. If he wants to really see what's happening, he should move closer, not step back. There is a thought in leadership which is called, which I've shared before, go to the balcony. And this is the idea. You're on the dance floor. Somebody asks you, how are things going? And you say, how are things going? It is so crowded on this dance floor. And everybody is stepping on everybody else's feet. Things are not going too well on this dance floor. Okay, now you go up to the balcony and you're looking at the same scene and somebody says, no, how are things going? And you say, the dance floor doesn't look too crowded and everyone is dancing so gracefully. On the dance floor, it's so congested. On the dance floor, everybody's tripping over everybody else's feet. But when you step back from a distance, you see it from a different perspective. And I think this is the message of Moshe, that when he wants to get a sense of the whole revelatory experience, he says, and this is really the Kli Yakar, Rev Launches, going back, I think, to the 17th century. I'm blocking this, it was Reb Ephraim, I believe. This is what he says. He had the idea of leadership, go to the balcony hundreds of years ago. Moshe says, let me walk back, let me step back. I think that that's a great message for life. And it's a very important message. Here, whenever I speak about growing older, I really am speaking to myself and letting you listen because, the other day we had the funeral of Richard Rubel. What a sweet, beautiful man, just a sweet, beautiful man. His wife, may she be well, is Toby's mahjong partner. Every time he would leave Richard the shul on Shabbat, I give him a hug. And we had a tradition. I would say to him, crack, dot, bam. I would say crack, dot. And he would say, no, crack, dot, bam. That's how we greeted each other on Shabbat. And he told a story when he was once honored as Chatan Torat. He lived near the RJC. I didn't mention the RJC at the funeral, but amongst friends knew the competition, quote unquote. It's no longer the competition. But so he lived near the RJC. So he had a relative who said, oh, you're going to come to the RJC. And he said, not so fast. That was his language. Not so fast. And it was a hard funeral because when I think about the Bayit, and it's 50 years. It's 50 years. This past Sunday was 50 years that we came to the Bayit. You came in May, Ruby. We came January. And there are people, I'm looking at you, who meant so much to the Bayit and meant so much to me personally. So much. And Vivian, your husband, my memory of walking past him, and he would kind of prime me for the talk. He would kind of get me going, get the juices going. And afterwards, as only he could, he told me what he thought and always was very, very positive. And Harvey with his bird on his shoulder, and British accent Joyce was so very, very beloved. It goes on and on and on. And Stanley, that whole row back there. And now Richard, thank God with Rev Stephen, is like a whoa. I think the Bayit has never been thriving in its best years were its COVID years. But as we're getting older, Adam Karov Latzmo, I'm getting older too. Toby remains young, but we're hitting 80 pretty soon. We're not, whoa, that's a big birthday. And many people here are 80, some less. And people are living to their 90s, to their hundreds. So, whenever I speak about aging, Toby says to me, boy, oh boy, you're pounding away. This is really on your mind. Maybe you should talk to someone about getting older. It's not a bad idea. And part of growing older is that we look back on our lives, and sometimes I think we look too closely. Part of life is being able to see life in its panoramic picture, like Moshe did. He steps back. If we get too close to the mirror, we're going to see the wrinkles. And as my dear friend, she should be well, Daniela Grunfeld always says, the lines, we've earned the lines. Lines on our faces could be beautiful. But when we get close to the mirror, there's so many wrinkles. Sometimes it's best to step back. And we can look at our beloved and we can see, ooh, the wrinkles. Yeah, but we can look at ourselves and there are wrinkles too. Sometimes it's important to step back, or we love someone and someone has disappointed us. Well, there are two ways we can approach it. One is we can get close and we can focus on the disappointment. And the other is we can step back and say, yeah, there was a disappointment, but maybe if I step back, I can just kind of build a wall around the disappointment, a little wall around it. I can, what I call, bracket it. And the larger good, there's a lot of good. There's great stuff, like the prayer written during COVID. We say to God, Yididi Ahuvi Mahmad Nafshi, O God, Ana Azor Li Lahodot Lecha, help me offer thanksgiving to you. Al Kol HaBrachot Shenatatali, for all the blessings that you've given me, Shenaktali. V'lo latetet li bi al brachot shechaserot li. And God, help me not focus on the blessings I don't have. Yes, to see things from a distance. As much as we're told that we have to forgive others, I believe we have to learn to forgive ourselves. Growing older means to feel good about our past as we move into the future. And that could be the deeper message of this one word, asura. Moshe says, let me step back. Let me see it from a distance. You know, in homiletics, we're always trying to find different ideas in the text. So recently it was pointed out to me that there is even a Yiddish word in the Bible. So what is the Yiddish word? How do you say grandchild in Yiddish? Everybody blurts it out. A grandchild is an anacle. An anacle. And let's go back to the text, Eric. In the text, what does Moshe see in the top sentence there? Vayera malach Adonai elav bilabat ish. So the angel appeared in the blazing fire, mitoch hasneh. Vayar, and he sees v'nei hasneh boeh ba'ish, v'hasneh, but the burning bush, einenu ukol, is not consumed. Look at that word, einenu ukol. Pull it together. Einenu ukol is anacle. Estelle agrees with me. Even Estelle agrees.
Avi,
The Yiddish is right there. You know, when the fire is not consumed, the light is not consumed. If we're so blessed, when we look not only at our children, when we look at our grandchildren. And the key when we look at our grandchildren is, don't look too closely. Don't look too closely. The love of a grandparent to a grandchild is very different than a parent to a child. A grandparent to a grandchild, if you really love your grandchild, you don't say no to a grandchild. You don't see the negative. You only see the positive. Asura nava ereh. Let me step back 2 generations. You know, that Els Bentheim, we should be so blessed. We used to ask Anu, how many grandchildren do you have? And she would always say, I don't count. Finally, she passed away at almost at 100. Maybe she was 100. And SAR announced, this is her legacy. She and her husband, who died years ago, Charles, they were really pillars of the community. Els and Charles had 7 children, both married, 45 grandchildren, 43 married. Hold on to your seats, everyone. They had, I believe, 239 great-grandchildren. And at her death, she had 39 great-great-grandchildren. Wow, that was something. Just a few more words and then we're opening it up a stove. I'm just warming up now. So Moshe says, Asura Navereh, let me back off and see this great sight. And the next sentence, Vayar Adonai Kisar Liros, and the Lord saw that he had turned aside to look. Vayikra Elav Elohim mitoch hasneh, and God called to him from the midst of the snare by Yomen. He said, Moshe, Moshe. My father's name was Moshe. I still can hear my mother screaming, Moshe, Moshe. My mother's name was Miriam. In the Bible, that's Moshe's sister. Vayomer, and Moshe answered, Hineni. Now I want to show you something. Look at the top line here. At the top line of this column, Eric, it's Vayera Malach Adonai Elav, and the angel of the Lord appeared to him, Bilabat Ish, in, what's the translation? In a blazing fire. So when one reads this, it looks as if there was a burning fire, and when he stepped back to really see it, he suddenly saw in the burning fire, he saw an angel of the Lord. But by the time we get to the third sentence in this column, it's no longer an angel of the Lord that he sees. No, there it says, Vayar Adonai Kisar Lirot. He's having a relationship, not with the angel of the Lord, but with the Lord himself. So if I can face everyone, I want to make this point, and in a moment or two, I'm going to stop and get your impressions on what we've been saying so far. What's fascinating, and this I saw in the writings of Rabbeinu Bachya, his medieval commentary, is it seems that Moshe is having a revelatory experience in layers. He first sees this fire, this soft fire, and he steps back. But when he steps back, he sees in the midst of the fire an angel of the Lord. And when he steps further back, he doesn't see within that fire just the angel of the Lord, but he begins to converse with God himself. So which is it? What was he looking at? Was he looking at a fire? Or was he looking at an angel in the fire? Or was he looking at God? And here's the thought. The Kotzker Rebbe, a great Hasidic Rebbe, used to say, Vu is Gott. Where is God? And his Hasidim, I would add Hasidot, would answer, Vu is Gott. Where is God? God is everywhere. To which the Rebbe said, Nein, mein Kinder, no, my children, that's not the case. Gott is vumilost im ein. God is where we let him enter. In the Kedusha of the Musaf service, we say, Kadosh, 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 Hashem Tzvakot, Meloch ha'aretz kivodo, which means Kadosh, 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 transcendent is God. That's what Kadosh means, separate and apart. In other words, God minus the world equals God. And then we say, Meloch ha'aretz kivodo, which means that God is omnipresent. There's an immanence to God. So in that one sentence from Yeshayahu, from Isaiah, we're saying God is distant so far, and yet God is so close. That was Maimonides' proof that God has no body, is incorporeal, because how could God be transcendent and immanent and have immanence at the same time? But such is God. God is everywhere. Ein makom panui b'li shechina. There is no place devoid of the presence of God. But then in the Kedusha we say, Kivodo malei olam. The glory of God fills the earth. Mishatav sho'alim zeh lazeh. Aye Mikom Kvodo, and yet we're asking, where is God? Where is God? I remember the first time I saw the Kotel, I was there with a wonderful young man, Mark Bellsberg, out of Vancouver. And Vancouver kids, legends have been written about them. They were very much inspired by a dear friend of mine, Pinky Bach, who died at a very young age, tragically, but he inspired them. And so we took a whole bunch of them to Israel. This is more than 50 years ago. And Mark, who is now mayor living in Israel, he's made such a contribution to Israel. He said to me, I went to the wall and God was not talking to me. I didn't feel anything. And I remember sitting with Mayor, I said, well, were you talking to God? Yeah, God can only talk to you maybe if you're talking to God. Where is God? God is when you let him enter. If I look at the beauty of the tree, what did Joyce Kilmer say? Poem are amazed by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. One can look at a tree and one could see what one sees. But can I look at a tree? Can I go to the Rockies? Can I go to the Alps? Can I feel the presence of God? Vu is God, God is vu milastimine. And I'd like to radically argue that God was in that burning bush, but Moshe needed time to see God. He needed time to open up and let God enter. And so first, what did Moses see? He only saw the fire. Then when he stepped back, he saw the angel. And after he saw the angel, when he really focused and was in dialogue, then he saw God himself. In fact, is it too radical to argue that there were many who passed by the burning bush who could have had this revelation, but they messed up? They didn't see the deeper meaning of the bush. The power of Moshe was not that he was the first to see the burning bush, but that he was the first to see the burning bush with such deep meaning. Could it be, this is really radical, this is where I get into trouble, that Abraham was not the first one to whom God spoke and said, Lech lecha, leave your land with your wife Sarah, go to Canaan. God opened up those words to many, but they didn't see it. They didn't feel it. It's like somebody who's fallen, stricken in the street. There's been videos of this, and people just pass by until finally someone sees the person who was stricken and recognizes what it's all about and does something about it. That's the movement. The movement is, it took time even for Moshe to recognize, to internalize what he was seeing. Only Moshe could hear God calling out, Moshe, Moshe. And one wonders, why Moshe twice? Why twice? So the Ibn Ezra in the 11th century, being the literalist that he is, he says, well, because finally so many people were passing by and not realizing what this is all about. So Moshe is like snap to attention. Moshe. But I'd like to think when my mother called my father Moshe, look, deep down, I think she really wanted him to snap to attention. But there's another way of viewing when you say Moshe twice. It's the language of love. I've shared this with you before. It's the language of endearment. It wasn't Moshe, it was Moshe. He was in a place where he was having this love encounter with God. We're celebrating the 50th anniversary, the yahrzeit of the great Abraham Heschel. And as one who grew up with the Maimonidean idea of God, that God is transcendent and all powerful and all that, Heschel wrote about it, and he was really gleaning from Hasidic sources. He has a book that's called God in Search of Man. God is not distance. God is searching for us. God says to Adam, Ayeko, where are you? God says to Cain, Hevel achicha, where is your brother Abel? Where are you? Anyone who says, where are you? That means it's an expression of love. And God says, Moshe, I have a Eric, I don't know if you've noticed, whenever I write an email, I never write dear. First of all, I started with dear something, but it's never dear Eric. What is it? Dear Eric. People have asked me why twice dear. It's based on this. I want to open up a communication with the language of endearment. So to summarize all these points, oh, hold on, Estelle, just another minute. I know you're plotzing, but just another moment. I haven't even started what I really prepared. I really wanted to talk about what is this.
Something.
Estelle is plotzing. Okay. Estelle.
No.
Yes.
No, you were talking about the burning bush. So this is very, very interesting. We went to Mount Sinai.
Yeah.
And we arrived there in the evening, just before evening came. And as we were sitting and waiting at the foot of Mount Sinai, there was a bush. And I'm trying to say this, that as the light was focusing, as the sun was setting, and it was focusing on the bush, it actually appeared to be burning. This is what I wanted to say. The bush actually lit up, just the reflection of the light. I mean, I didn't have any spiritual feelings about that, but it was an awe-inspiring sight. And I will say this, with the light reflecting on this bush at the foot of Mount Sinai was something that we have never forgotten.
Yeah.
Then at the dawn, as we started to climb Mount Sinai, and we arrived at the top, just as dawn broke. So dawn, the sun was coming up over the mountains, and from the top of Mount Sinai, we looked there. We couldn't see the bush because it was further down, but there it seems that the Christians had gotten there ahead of us, and there were two churches planted right on the top of Mount Sinai. It didn't detract from the burning bush, but it was something that none of us, my family nor I, had ever forgotten. I don't know if there was nothing spiritual about it, but it was an experience, I must say.
Well, Estelle, if I may, as one who loves you dearly, dear Estelle, until your last words, you were describing to me what I felt was a very spiritual, if I may say, godly experience.
It was almost.
There you are.
Almost. But it was the reflection of the sun, of the setting sun on the bush, which was probably the same thing that hit Moses.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. I mean, it could be spiritual if it's done through ordinary
yes.
ways.
We really have no disagreement. I see beyond the ordinary something I think I told you this story. My father was a great storyteller. When I was a little boy, he told the story as in my adult years, it really resonated that I doubt the story is true, but Maimonides used to have these debates with Egyptian doctors. That is true. And one of the debates, it took my father like a half hour to tell the story. I'll tell it in 2 minutes, but I hope you don't mind. So in preparing for the debate that was to take place in the office of Maimonides, so Maimonides in the 12th century, he had a magnificent artist draw a picture of the beauty of the world. And it was a just magnificent picture. And he put it on a table in the waiting room, and it pictured the world moving from sunrise and sunset, and the beauty of the greeneries and the animal world. And it was just breathtaking. And the doctors come in for the debate, and as usual, Maimonides sends out his secretary and says, be with you in a moment. And they're looking at this magnificent picture. Maimonides was a very smart man, and he had an inkwell, those ink bottles they used to put the fountain pens in to get it wet. And he took the inkwell and he emptied it of its ink, and he turned it on its side, just like that. And he left it on the side of the picture. And so Maimonides finally comes out to greet his colleagues, and they're about ready to debate the existence of God. And they say to my mom, just before we go in, who drew this? What a magnificent artist. He said, what are you talking about? He said, this canvas on the waiting table. And my mom, he says, what do you mean? I just had an empty canvas there. He says, no, look. And he looks, and of course he sees this beautiful picture. My mom plays dumb. And he says, I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, well, they say, who drew it? And my mom puts his hands to his head, and he says, oh my God, don't you see what happened? The inkwell spilled over. And on its own, this is what was drawn. And his debating partners or his opponents were just flabbergasted. That's impossible. How could it be that an inkwell spills? It's just beyond probability that it could spill over and all of this could happen on its own. And yada, 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 until Maimonides admits, yeah, I actually had it drawn, reveals to them the artist, and they say, well, let's begin the debate. And Maimonides says, the debate is showing fartik, it's over, it's finished. They said, why? He said, well, because if you think that the probability that this was drawn on its own is beyond mathematical probability, it could not have happened on its own. And look at the artist of artists, look at the beauty of the world. I would love to teach from the outside, but it's too sunny. So looking at the ocean, the magnificent, magnificent world, obviously it, and that was the snare, but a lot of what we look at, it depends upon the way we look at it. We can look at it externally, we can look at something internally. They tell the story about Samson Raphael Hirsch, who lived in the 19th century. He never took a vacation. He never went to Miami, he never took a vacation. And one time when he got a bit older, he decided that he's gonna go into the Swiss, into the mountains. So his congregants were flabbergasted. And they said, Rabbi Hirsch, you're taking a vacation? He said, listen, I'm getting older. When I get up to heaven, I want to make sure when God says to me, Shimshon, did you see my Alps? Did you see my Alps? I want to make sure I have what to answer. And that's, we take the burning bush for granted. A lot of people could see. Kitty Genovese, do you remember that story?
Yes.
About everybody looked out the window. When they looked out, they didn't see what they should have seen. They should have seen on the other, there's the flip end, something tragic unfolding. What Bev does when she sees a wrong, I've got to do something about it, to internalize it. And we're talking about seeing behind the facade, to seeing the beauty of God. Daniel, you had your hand up.
Yeah, can I?
Yes, you mentioned that Moshe's experience at the bush went into stages. And it's more to point out something that Umberto Cassuto said, that if you look carefully at the text, you see the name of God changing from Hashem to Elohim. And in the beginning, before the revelation of Eresh, whenever the narrator is speaking, in the narrator's voice, it says Hashem. But when he's speaking to Moses, you see the word to, or the lamed in front of Lemoshe, it's always Elohim. So at the beginning, at first he sees an angel, and then he sees Elohim, and then later, at the end, another stage where he gets to know the name of the Yud Kei Vav Kei.
Thank you, Daniel. Anyone else?
Yes.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, can I?
Yeah.
Can I please?
Yes,
say
Tova.
something?
Yes, Tova.
When you said that Moshe saw the burning bush step back and saw an angel. So that angel got his attention so that God's plan for the future with Moshe could go on. And we see this many times. We saw this at the Akedah. It's an angel, not God, who says to Abraham, don't touch him, don't kill him. And then God's plan for the future can go on. And when you mentioned Abraham as not the first monotheist, history tells us that, but he was the great proselytizer, and his, quote, business partner was Sarah. And so, since they were business partners, when God comes to Abraham and he says, the future is with your son, Yitzchak. And Abraham says, no, 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 I already have a kid. We have somebody. And then Sarah, and she says, no, 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 no. Abraham is old. We can't do it. It took an angel to come and convince them that they had to be the parents of the future. So it's always first the angel catches the attention.
Yes. And you know, there's a whole teaching to it. First, thank you so much, as usual. There's a teaching in the beginning of the Rambam's Moreh Nevuchim, the Guide of the Perplexed, and there's a chapter on angels. What is an angel of God? And he spans the world. Is a tree an angel? After all, it's a creation of God. True, we seed it, but could the angel be an external kind of celestial figure that speaks miraculously to us? Or could the angel be an inner soulfulness? It's almost like the image of God within us is speaking to us. So just a thought, can a human being be an angel? You know that when Joseph went looking for his brothers, he lost his way. And there was an anonymous figure. What's an anonymous figure in Yiddish? Unanomen. A person, unanomen, came up to him and said, "You look lost." Now, it's tough enough to get on the New York City subways these days. When you get lost, you ask for directions. If we were on a subway these days and somebody comes up to us and says, "Ma'am, you look lost," a lot of people would get very frightened. And who went up to Joseph to say, "You look lost"? And by the way, without this person showing Joseph the way to his brothers, maybe we would not be a people today. Maybe he would never have been sold. He would have gone back home. So the rabbis say, who was this anonymous person? It was an angel. It was Gabriel. Gabriel, the angel. Gabriel is a compound of Gever El. Gever means a human being. El means God. That's what an angelic figure is. Sometimes an angelic figure can be a person. It could, you know, we all have our Elijahs that we've met. You know the story when we went down to the AME church after the 9 Black brothers and sisters were murdered. So the next week we went down to a study group and we asked the pastor if we could join as an expression of solidarity. And then I still remember what he said. He said, "Yes, Rabbi, you can join, but just remember, when we study Bible, we don't study with footnotes." You can take that for whatever it means. In other words, you know, we're studying it, you know, hallelujah, from the heart. And it was a wonderful setting. And I was saying Kaddish for my father. My father just died. And excuse the repetition, but this is an angel story. I had to get to 1 million, but I had no way of getting that. I couldn't get a cab. And I see a holy Black sister, Black woman coming out. She was in a cast. And I don't know what possessed me. I just went up to her and I said, "Can you help me get to," I think it was Foley Beach or something like that. There's always Israelis somewhere who can make up 1 million in South Carolina. And she said, "Of course." And I get in there and the car is rattling. It's an old dilapidated car. And I'm saying a prayer, "Oh, please get there." And I know her name is Octavia. And we get there on time. And I say Kaddish. I thought it was such a beautiful story that I wrote it up. And you can probably Google it. It was published on the op-ed page of the Charleston Courier, something like that. I get a call a couple of days later from the op-ed editor, and he says to me, "I've got good news and bad news. The good news is, yeah, the article did pretty well. The bad news is Octavia, my friend who gave me the ride, she's very upset with you." I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because she was very upset that you wrote that her car was broken down, that you prayed that it should, and you prayed that it should make it." And can you hear me? So
Yeah.
I said, "Give me a number," and I called her. We actually spoke. And I said, please forgive me, because that's not something you say. I learned you don't say that somebody has a dilapidated car. She was using her last dollar probably to buy this car. It was not the right thing to say. So I apologized. And she said to me, Rabbi, I want to tell you two things. The first thing is, I forgive you. Well, that didn't surprise me, because I was just at a study session where they forgave the murderer of their 9 friends, because that's the Christian tradition. They're much better than I am. And then she said, and Rabbi, I want you to know a second thing. I want you to know that if I would have had to carry you on my back so you could say your prayer for your father, I would have carried you on my back. And I said to Octavia, that's why you were for me when we first met. You were Elijah, the prophet for me, whom you meet and helps you in the most, interesting of circumstances. And certainly after what you told me just now, you are that angelic figure. Human beings can be God.
Oh, I think you're frozen.
Yeah, it's frozen.
Yeah.
4 minutes, so I'll just start us off and then I'll finish it. The question that I wanted to get to, that I wanted to start with, but just we were kind of I was swept off my feet just studying this with Eric, whom I thank so much for your help. Eric, any thoughts? Do you have any thoughts on any of this? Eric is soon to be a rabbi, so this June.
I'm really drawn to this idea of Sne and Sinai, and that it sounds similar, but the experiences are also similar. It is an all-encompassing experience at Har Sinai. It is light, it is sound, and you get that experience here, right? Moshe sees the light of the Sne, and then he hears the sound of God. And it is almost a foreshadowing of Har Sinai. It's a small taste of what's to come.
Yes, absolutely.
Well,
I think,
I
yes,
mean,
please.
you can't take away the top of Mount Sinai to the burning bush. I mean, each is beautiful in its own way, but you don't think it just could have been the way the sun hit it?
Right. I want to read to you something that, and next week we'll proceed with this. I want to read to you just the words of my dear friend, Dr. Gaya Bernstein, which I've included in Torat Ahavah, which we're getting closer and closer to publication, I hope soon. And I have ordered sets for all of you, because all of you have had so much to do with the thoughts here. And I just want to read to you from the work, and then I quote Gaya. And in the end, it deals with the symbolism of the burning bush. Perhaps too, I'm picking it up actually from the middle. Perhaps too, when Moses flees after being criticized by a fellow Jew for killing the Egyptian. Now I'm going back because right before the preamble to the burning bush story is, of course, he sees an Egyptian smiting the Jew, and he smites the Egyptian. He stops the Egyptian. According to most, he kills the Egyptian. The next day, he sees 2 Jews who are at each other's throats, and he says to them, you're both Jews, why are you hitting each other? And they said, who made you the leader? Who made you the judge? And so when Moses heard that they knew that he had smitten the Egyptian, he becomes frightened. And that's what causes him to flee to Midian. He thought that his life indeed was in jeopardy. So perhaps when Moses flees after being criticized by a fellow Jew for killing the Egyptian, and having his life threatened by Pharaoh, because he figured that if the Egyptian knows he slew an Egyptian, that certainly Pharaoh would know. He becomes uncertain to whom he should be loyal, the Egyptians or the Jews. He really doesn't know. He was raised in an Egyptian home. He was nursed by his mother, who was Jewish. In fact, after he saves Jethro's daughters, they describe Moses to their father as an Ish Mitzri. He goes to Midian, and he is described as an Egyptian man. Soon after, Moses sees the phenomena of the bush that burns without end. Now, this is the thought of Geya Aronoff Bernstein, Dr. Geya. It is as if suddenly Moses has a divinely inspired insight that he is looking at his family tree on fire, in danger of being consumed and obliterated. He has an acute awareness that he must heed the call to help and leave the comforts and safety of living among non-Jews in Midian. He realizes that despite his own reluctance and insecurity, he is uniquely positioned to help his people. He must respond to the call of his soul to help carry out the divine mission. Again, at this point, what Geya is arguing is Moshe was struggling with his identity, and when he's forced to escape, he has a choice. He could easily run back to Pharaoh and maybe, because he had been raised there, win his love and he would be safe. Or was he a Jew? It is, and again, I'm repeating, when he sees this burning bush, as if he suddenly has an divinely inspired insight that he's looking at his family tree on fire, in danger of being consumed. This is being understood very differently than what we've presented and obliterated. Something just touches him. He has an acute awareness that he must do something to help, to leave the comforts where he was living in Midian, never to return to the comforts of the Egyptian palace. And then he realizes that despite his own reluctance and insecurity, he is qualified to help his people. And he has to respond to their call and help with God's help to bring about the redemption. So this is a particular way of looking at the symbolism of the sneh, seeing it as, wow, the potential of his people being consumed. It's a very different way. It's different than any of the classic commentaries look at this phenomena. We're going to end with this. I'll just take your comments and we'll continue with this topic on symbolism next week. Anyone?
Yes. May I?
Please.
May I?
Yes, and then
May I?
Vivian, yes.
Okay, well, you quoted the passage of Moshe leading the flock, Achar Hamidbar, beyond the Midbar. Doesn't that echo of the Akedah, where you saw Ayel Acher Nechaz Basvach?
Absolutely.
So this connects the Akedah to the sneh.
Right. And actually the same thought applies, because you would think that the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, was a divinely ecstatic moment. And yet when he realizes that he could replace Isaac with the ram, it's a ram that is achar, it's acher, it doesn't belong to anyone. Even then, he doesn't want to grab a ram that belongs to someone else, thinking, well, I mean, does it get holier in my worship of God than this moment? I could take a ram, I can take an animal, no matter who it belongs to. No, it's the same idea. He makes sure that on the way to his serving God, he doesn't step on another human being. So I thank you very much, Judy, for that parallelism. Thank you, Vivian, and then Alberta. Vivian, you have to unmute yourself, Vivian. Vivian,
Vivian, you're muted.
Now I can, Vivian. Go ahead. Vivian?
Am I right?
No.
I just have a shade.
Am I right? Oh,
I'm sorry, Vivian. I can't hear.
am I
Okay,
right?
Alberta and then Zalman. Alberta?
You know,
You're muted as well, Alberta.
How about now?
We can hear you.
Okay. When I remarried my lovely husband, Peter, one of the things that we inherited from his parents is a statue of the burning bush. So I'm hoping you can see it. Has an
Wow.
integral, beautiful spot in our apartment. And I just wanted everyone to see it. It's this amazing wrought iron, heavy statue. And my husband, who's an architect, made a base for it. And it has its predominant place in our apartment. This is the burning bush by an artist actually in Boston, Massachusetts.
Wow. And the symbolism for you, Alberta, thank you for sharing.
Well, it's actually at our dining table, and for all meals when we're actually discussing on Shabbat lunch, Devar Torahs, we look at it. So it just reminds us that Torah has to be part of our daily life.
Right.
And we need that reminder.
And Alberta, I would imagine that every time you look at it, you see more in it, in that beautiful art.
We do. It's
Right.
a very, very large piece. And when we first saw it, we didn't know what to do. And my husband said, well, we'll put it in front of the window, which it is.
Yeah, and I want to bless you that in your marriage, keep looking at each other and seeing a new song, the Shir Chadash, that much like the burning bush should be loving relationships.
Thank you,
Zalman,
Rabbi.
it's your chance, Zalman.
Alberta,
okay,
what's in
I
the
was-
middle of it?
hello?
Oh, sorry.
I said.
Can you hear me?
Can I speak now?
Yes, yes, Alberta.
The middle has a small, I'm not even sure. Let me just see. I can actually go close to it.
Yes, I could
I
see
think
it.
it's the actual flame itself, which is eternal.
Wow, beautiful,
Yeah.
just beautiful.
So it takes up the entire window, as you can see, of our apartment. It's quite large. It's about 5 foot by,
Wow.
it's big. And
And
we
is
just
it
decided
metal?
it
is
is
it-
metal. It's very, very heavy
Wow.
and very difficult to dust, to say the least. But our dining room table sits right in front of it, which is great.
And Peter did the artistry?
No, Peter did the base.
I see. Just gorgeous. I've become sensitive to this because our daughter Dina is, I must say objectively, is a remarkable paper cut artist. And,
Oh, wow.
and actually most recently, some of her paper cut artistry, someone took it and turned it into metal. It's like, it's another dimension of artwork. I used to take Dina to Stern College where I taught when she was a little girl, 4 or 5 years old, and I would be teaching and I would see my students are smiling. And when I would turn around, the whole board, for as high as she could get, was just full of beautiful artistry. So she had it from the time she was a little girl. Zalman, did you want to say something? Vivian?
Yes, I
did
want
you
to say something.
Yes,
Yes,
please.
when we say Birkas Hamazon, when we say cold, they knew everything was going to happen. They didn't know exactly everything because when I'll go back a little bit to Vayiki when Yaakov was talking about his sons, and they were Simon and Levi. that were bad. He didn't think too much of them. But when in Shemot, you know, that when you go to Shemot and it says that only Levi, the house of Levi, practiced their religion.
I don't know
You
if
know,
they.
he didn't know that. He didn't know,
Oh,
he didn't
yeah,
know
he
that.
wrote it,
Only they practiced their religion. And that's all. And only the Levites practiced it. The other people went close. They went back to the Egyptians, the other tribes. So he didn't know everything. You know. He didn't know that they were going to be only the Levites who because they did bad in the time of when they attacked and check him. But only the Levites did practice their religion. You see, whatever they learned from Hashem. So
Thank
know
you,
everything.
Zalman.
That's very important to understand. Nobody knows everything, right?
Right. Absolutely,
That's
Zalman. Vivian, did you unmute?
Right?
Vivian, were you
Right.
able to unmute?
Right.
No, thank you, Zalman. Thank you. Arnie, did you want to say something?
Whatever it is. You heard me what I said, right?
Yes, I did.
What I said?
Yes, Zalman.
Okay, that's why.
Well, thank you.
The Levites were supposed to be the bad ones. They killed in Shechem, right? They killed all those Ahavah.
Yes. Arnie, did you want to say something? I don't know, maybe, is it my problem that you're muted, everyone, or can you unmute?
Now you can hear me.
There we go, Arnie. Do you
so
remember, Arnie, do you remember Let's Go to the Videotape?
Yes, I do.
I do
Warren
too.
or Wolf?
So I don't know if this is appropriate to share with the class, but I think of each of you in a way as my friends. And so in that regard, you know, I've been going through a really hell of an ordeal these last 2 years, and it's really intensified. And, you know, I guess in my life, I've thought of angels. I've thought of the angels in the Bible differently. Sometimes I thought the angels of God were beautiful and important. And sometimes I thought, like now, I'm thinking the angels that are ordinary figures are so beautiful in the way they have helped me get through this. And, you know, I'm still struggling to get through it. And those angels are still helping me. The orderlies in the hospital, the aides to the nurses themselves, everybody is an angel. And I'm wondering if you look around, maybe there are more angels even than I'm seeing. And I'm seeing lots of angels. I'll tell you, there's a lot of people helping me. So I just wanted to say that.
Well,
you know,
that's a wonderful way to conclude. And Arnie, from the depths of my heart, may Omek be, you too are one of those angels. You too, you're a profile in courage. You have a heart that's overflowing with goodness, with love, with all of that, notwithstanding what you've been experiencing. And you mean so much, I know, to me and to everyone. And we love you, Arnie. And everybody is an angel in their own way, and you're a great inspiration. That too is angelic. So on that note, Bev, did you want to say, Bev will truly the last word, otherwise, please. Thank you, Arnie.
I just have a question. God appears, excuse me, to Moses in a burning bush. And sometimes God appears as a heavy wind, and sometimes God appears as an ish, as in the case of Joseph, for example. I'm just curious if there is an explanation as to why God appears to various biblical characters in a different form.
Great. Well, I just for a thought you may want to consider, I don't know if God appears as much as God has emissaries. And what we're arguing now is all of us can be emissaries of God. We have the capacity, we have the potential. And what Arnie was arguing, when you turn on the national news, it's, my goodness, it looks like the whole world is evil. And the truth of the matter is that, 90% of the world is wonderful. People are wonderful. So what Arnie was talking about, as I understand it, was people who are godlike, who are godly, God's emissaries who touched your life, Arnie, and did the same for me. And I'm sure everyone can remember such moments. When Ted and Bev, when you think about Judy's life, it was not an easy life, but it was a heroic life, and it had its love, it had its beauty, and there were people out there who were God's emissaries, and through that and more, that's who you became, both of you, without a doubt. Doing God's wishes is godly. That's angelic. Vivian, were you able to unmute? I'm not sure. Viv, I'm so sorry that we can't hear you. Yeah, it's probably a little button there you have to press, Viv. I know I have that problem too. Eric could fix it in a second.
Should I say something, add something?
Yeah, first Ellen. Ellen, did you want to say something? Ellen, you're muted. Ellen, you're muted.
My wife, should I say something?
Yeah, one moment. One moment,
Okay.
Salman.
Is it okay now?
Yes.
I want to add on to what Arnie said, and that is that, and also what you were saying before, I believe that there are angels probably all around us. It's the people who recognize them. And Arnie recognizes them. Just as Estelle said, there must have been plenty of people walking by that bush at sunset, but they didn't see what Moshe saw. It's being able to recognize the spirituality of an experience and being able to recognize the angels that are there. That's important.
I so appreciate that, Ellen. That's so true. And I go so far as to say that if one recognizes the angel in the other, that is an expression of one's own angelology, if there is such a term. It's angels who recognize angels. So.
Okay.
Yes, Salman.
Well.
Yes, Salman.
Yeah, hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
2 years, a little bit over 2 years ago, I got a stroke. I had to go to the Hebrew home for a while. Hebrew home. I learned how to walk again.
Yes, I remember.
In 156 times since I went to shul. Started going to shul. That was December 2nd, 2020. By May 15th, 2021, I went back to shul. You don't see me because I go Friday night. That's all I go. And 152 times, I only missed 15 times. I've been there at school every day. I'm all by myself. I have no family, nothing. I always ask Shuli to have. I have a list of people I want to call me. In their memory, okay, and they're on it. I don't get too many people calling me by myself. I lucky have some aides to help me. Right? No, 151 times. I went 136 times to on Friday night. You don't see me because you don't go Friday nights, but a lot of people see me on Friday night, and I go. I have my aides. They take me by car. They pick me up, and I go. That most of the time, it's getting harder. I go I miss only 15 times out of 151 times. I go and I stand up on my walk and I go. Not too many people call me. I'm asking Shuli to get the people to call me. They call me. That's why even not only text me, just call me. That's all. I appreciate that. That's all. Zalman,
I really.
You hear what I'm saying?
I do. I have to do better, Zalman. I have to do. Zalman is wonderful.
I used to visit people all the time when they were sick. I was
Yes,
speaker police. No, that
Yeah.
I was volunteer for everything that I was walk. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm asking for. Okay.
Yes, Zalman.
You hear me?
I do,
You hear me?
Zalman. Yes.
Makalenu. I used to leave the minions all the time. I was in the Hebrew home if I got sick. I do all those things. I guess I want some responses. Okay. That's why
Yes. Yes,
Zalman. Okay, that's all I want. I came back.
Yes,
I never
Zalman.
gave up.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Musa. It's so well said. On that note, everyone, Arnie, Ezra is probably on, but yes, for sure the last word. But I'd like to give you an assignment to think about the burning bush. Could it represent Egypt? Could it represent Israel? Could it represent God? And that's what we'll get into next week. I wanted to give you just some coming attractions. And Arnie, yes.
I just wanted to add to what I was saying and what other people have said. I'm on pain medicine, so I'm really loopy today. But I wonder if the burning bush, or for me, it represents all those people who sent me emails to cheer me up, who gave me phone calls, who did all these wonderful things. And, you know, for me, that was the burning bush at that moment.
It's beautiful. I love that. You've opened me up, all of you, to a new understanding of the burning bush. Eric, isn't it remarkable? It's just
Absolutely.
The glory of the rabbinate is recognizing that we generally don't have it right. It's not the rabbi and the congregants. I'm the student learning from my teachers. I really feel that way. I feel just so blessed. We love you. And is
I
Ezra
don't know
on?
why this can't represent
just got on.
nature itself. Why does it have to represent something? Can't you just look at the beauty of it as natural, as part of life? Why does it have to represent something else? I don't know.
No,
Sorry.
I hear. Absolutely. Ezra, how are we doing?
We are doing great. It's good to see you.
Just saying, Arnie opened us up to a whole different teaching of the burning bush, that the symbolism is the burning bush are those figures who are angel-like, who are there for us in times of need. And it's said so beautifully by everyone, Ellen and everyone.
Yeah.
Love you guys.
Thank you.
Be tuned for Rav Ezra.